Well, good evening, Mayor, council members, and community. This is Sue Hagener, your Finance Director, and welcome to the first formal touch and a 30,000-foot flyby of our City Manager's proposed budget for 2026. We've got great plans for infrastructure improvement with our capital improvement program. We've got technology advancements and much more. We intend to continue to bring the city to new levels of service in the coming years using technology, ingenuity, data, employee and citizen engagement, and thoughtful deployment of our resources. Our plans are to continue to do great things for governmental services. Now, just a couple of housekeeping matters regarding the digital budget book, which was made available to everybody on September 12th. We've got a feature allowing us to link you to specific documents for information, and if you are reviewing the book online, you just need to look for the blue lettering as you see on this screen, and just click on that and it will take you to more detailed information page. Next, please remember that you'll see lots of carets throughout the book down the left-hand side, and this simply means there are additional pages under that subject. And don't forget it's printable. There is a PDF button on the main ribbon of the book, and you can print the entire book or just the sections of the book you are interested. And alt text is actually used to describe images to visitors to the book who are unable to see them. And if you think something looks different about the book, you are correct. The navigation bar is now down the left-hand side of the page. And again, to print, you just click on the PDF, you make your page selections, and enter your email address. And it'll show up in your email box. Now, let me just remind everybody of our high-level 2026 budget calendar. March through July, we do back office preparations on the budget software, and the departments figure out their budget requests for the next year. In July, the city manager scrubs those numbers with the departments in order to achieve a balanced budget. In August, we build out our ClearGov website, or the digital budget book. In September, we deliver the digital budget book and provide council an overview with a review of 2026 rates and fees and the budget. In October, optional one-on-one meetings with the city manager and the team are available if needed. You just need to request it. In November, we have all of our budget-related public hearings. November 30th is the deadline for submitting our property tax levy to the county. And December 31 requires that we have an approved budget to conduct governmental business on the next calendar day. This budget reflects the city's dedication to sound financial stewardship and prudent fiscal management. It establishes the direction for the city council, the city departments, and all of their related programs and services. This budget allocates resources to the city council's priorities, the city's operational needs, and addresses input from the recent community and business surveys, ultimately to improve the quality of life in Sequim. This overall budget is $51.6 million in appropriations, and the second largest ever presented, primarily due to the inclusion of the $17 million capital improvement plan. So what are our overreaching goals for each city budget? Well, that's easy because they are established by the budget development policy as well as the fund balance policy. And they include implementing the city's goals and prioritizing the city's primary needs, achieving a balance between ongoing expenses and ongoing revenues to achieve balanced budgets, especially in our operational funds. We want to minimize the impact of taxes and fees on our residents and ratepayers. We want to maintain and improve the quality of municipal services. And finally, we want to maintain optimal reserve or fund balance levels. So while individual departments have their unique operational goals, there is a unified commitment to providing value through quality municipal services, superb customer service, and reducing costs through technology and enhanced efficiencies identified through a tenacious process improvement model. So let's take a quick look at the city's operational goals for 2026. First, we want to enhance the customer experience for employees, for residents, and businesses by evaluating and re-engineering all touch points to increase efficient and exceptional services. Digital transformation continues. We have a strategic commitment to smart city innovative advancements through state-of-the-art hardware, software, dashboards, artificial intelligence, and analytical opportunities. Process improvement is always a goal of our city employees. We are committed across all city operations to ensure efficiencies via data-driven decisions and return on investment. Community and economic development is also a priority. We want to complete the comprehensive plan with a focus on managing growth and development across the city while strategically implementing a multi-tier economic development plan to support enhance business activity. And finally, fiscal ownership. We want to manage finances to be in the top percentage of industry standards and ratios. We want to scrutinize every cost by line item, justifying returns while eliminating any waste. And everything we've got planned for 2026 will move us toward achieving our council's priorities. Now, there's a lot of things to consider as staff put together their budget requests. There are so many influences on what gets budgeted and what gets delayed or put aside. In other words, the budget is not created in a vacuum. On your screen, you'll see a lot of different influences on the budget process. You've got the capital improvement program. You have all of our different master plans. You have our comprehensive plan, our council priorities, our operational goals, our public safety or PD strategic plan. We've got our citizen and business surveys and much more. And now for the meat and potatoes of the 2026 budget. This is the actual document that council will approve, and it is our budget for 2026 at the fund level. And you can see it's quite a big one. We've got a total of $51.6 million in appropriations for the year, as stated earlier, again, primarily due to the inclusion of the capital improvement program. And as a reminder, council approves the budget at the fund level, and budgeting at the fund level simply means that this is the level at which the council approves the budget. So what exactly is a fund? Well, a fund is a fiscal and accounting entity with a self-balancing set of accounts recording cash and other financial sources or revenues, together with all related expenses and the residual ending fund balances. Each fund, as a separate accounting entity, is segregated for the purpose of carrying on specific activities or attaining specific objectives in accordance with special regulations, restrictions, or limitations. So for example, the general fund is the fund that all of our general governmental services are accounted for in. And in this budget, the general fund has a total expenditures of $13.7 million in 2026. And although it's composed of a lot of details like salaries and benefits and supplies and services, the council approves this budget at the $13.7 million level. The $13.7 million expenses is also commonly referred to in the budget world as appropriations. And hopefully by the end of November, council has approved the overall budget or appropriations at $51.6 million, which is about 50% bigger than our average annual budget. We'll talk about why in a little bit. So the previous slide represents council's job. This slide demonstrates staff's job. It's not meant for you to literally read every line, but to express the detailed analysis that goes into every expenditure that we request. This particular example is our line item budget for some streets-related expenditures, which we do for every department budget. It shows staff's discipline on budgeting. We budget by month if we can, so you can see on the screen that in much of June we expect to purchase crack sealant, and from April through September we expect to be purchasing road patch materials. But we identify each and every item that we like appropriations for in the next year. And this is the budget discipline that exists behind every number you approve. So before we go into more content of the budget book, you will note a new document called Frequently Used Terms. Our intention with this document is to describe the various revenue and expenditure categories that are prescribed by the State Auditor's Office, and then relate them to SQUIM's particular budget. So we've described each major category of revenue and expenditure, and again, we've detailed out what that particular term might mean for SQUIM. So for example, in this snippet, when we talk about supplies in the IT department, that might mean keyboards and monitors. And when you're talking about the police department, that might mean ammunition. And when you talk about the parks department, that might mean bark. This is a prescribed chart required in every budget book that shows at the highest level what pays for everything we want to do next year, or where will the money come from. And again, just to be clear, these are state auditor prescribed descriptions. So on the right side of the left side of the screen, you're going to see that the largest revenue source is $13.7 million, and it is goods and services. So it's revenues derived from the sale of goods and services. Most of this category is comprised of water and sewer revenues, but it also includes things like impact fees and developer charges for projects. It also includes internal overhead. The next largest source to the city comes from taxes. That includes sales tax, real estate excise tax, utility taxes, property tax, transportation benefit district taxes, public safety taxes, just to name a few. The third largest resource to the city comes from what is called transfers or non-revenues. This is primarily transfers in from other funds, mostly to pay for projects, but it also covers things like street operations, which doesn't have a very big funding mechanism. It also includes loan proceeds. The fourth largest source of resources comes from intergovernmental sources. This mostly includes things like grants, but also includes state shared revenues like motor vehicle taxes and liquor and marijuana enforcement monies. The fifth largest resource to the city are called enterprise and fiduciary, which includes general facility revenues from the water and sewer funds and also water and sewer hookups. Then we have licenses and permits, which is pretty self-explanatory, and miscellaneous revenues, which is mostly interest income and rental income. So where will the money go? Consistent with prior years, capital projects and equipment are the highest, totaling $18.5 million or comprising 36% of the budget. It was 43% of the prior year budget, and we'll talk more specifically about that later. Typically, this award goes to salaries and benefits, which is now the second highest use of our resources. Non-expense and transfers includes items like security deposits that are returned to the customer or construction project retention that is held briefly until projects are closed. And of course, you know what a transfer is. Charges for goods and services is the fourth biggest use of our dollars, and that includes everything from the city's utility bills, repair and maintenance, professional service contracts, meals, travel, and training. Other services, interfund, that's the fifth largest, and that includes all the overhead paid by the funds benefiting from services provided for and paid for from the general fund. Intergovernmental includes all taxes that the city has to pay out, as well as our criminal justice service contract with Clallam County and our police dispatch services that we pay to Port Angeles. We already talked about what supplies are, and we've also got debt financing accounted for. This is a 5-year history of actuals and budgets for the entire city. On the top of the page, you're going to see our different revenue classifications, and on the bottom, you'll see our expenditures. And on the note of expenses, again, this budget is $51.6 million, and it's approximately $6 million less, or 11% lower than the prior year budget, but approximately 45 to 50% higher than the average of our actual performance in 2022 through 2024. So let's talk about revenues. Most revenues are up from the prior year budget, with the exception of charges for goods and services. You can see that taxes are up by about $855,000 or 8%. Then you'll see a big increase in intergovernmental revenues, and that of about $4 million. And that represents grants from federal and state agencies. You'll see a rather large reduction in charges for goods and services, and that's a result of developer-related contributions to capital projects. On the expenditure side, our largest decrease is in capital projects due to adjustments in our capital improvement program. Now let's switch gears to focus on the general fund, which is the largest of any fund in the 2026 budget. This is the fund where all of our general governmental services are accounted. It's typically the largest of the funds. In 2026, it actually accounts for about 27% of the entire budget. Well, the good news is the general fund is in the black by $14,000. Current revenues are approximately $13 million and slightly exceed expenditures. Revenues are up by about 3%, expenses are up by about 3%, and that leaves our reserves at $4 million, which is slightly above policy maximum. Okay, so let's talk about general fund revenues. As I mentioned before, revenues increased by about $343,000 or 3% over the 2025 budget. And this is due to primarily sales tax is up about 9%, which accounts for, actually, it's only about 4% over our projected 2025 actuals. So it looks like a big increase, but when you look at how we're doing for 2025, we think it's only going to be about 4% over. Utility tax revenue of $2.1 million is up about 4%, and that's very typical year-over-year growth. The proposed 1% property tax increase is in this budget. License and fees, which is related to permitting and business activity, is up by about 1%. Intergovernmental is slightly down, and that's primarily due to having exhausted all of our comprehensive plan update grants in 2025. Charges for goods and services are relatively flat, and miscellaneous revenues, again, rentals and interest income, is up by about 26%. And that is consistent with what is happening in 2025. So let's take a closer look at sales tax, because sales tax is the largest revenue source to the general fund. And you can see we've got a 0.85% sales tax that goes into the general fund. It accounts for about 10% of the total 8.9% sales tax. Most of the sales tax is distributed to the state of Washington. So the city of Sequim just gets a little piece of that pie. And this is just another way to look at the distribution of our sales tax dollars. At the bottom of the page, you can see a $1,000 sale in the city of Sequim results in $11 in sales tax to the city of Sequim. It's just a different way of looking at the numbers. So as for general fund expenses, in 2026, they increased by $385,000 or 3% over the 2025 budget. We've got $257,000 increase in salaries and benefits, or an increase of 3%. And that is all made up of our 3 union contracts, step increases, and non-represented staff COLA increases. We actually had a decrease in our retirement rates, but it still represents about 71% of our general fund spending. I do want to say that our increases in salaries and benefits are per data analysis, market adjustments, comparable cities, and we use subject matter experts and internal work to assess all of our positions. We had a slight decrease in supply expenditures, increase in service charges. Again, that's professional service contracts, utilities. We had an increase in intergovernmental services, and those are primarily guided by contracts that are in place, again, with PennCom and Clallam County for criminal justice services, and a slight decrease in transfers out of the general fund. And these are the general fund expenses by department. Down the left-hand side, you can see all of the general governmental services accounted for in the general fund. There's the city council, the city manager, finance, human resources, facilities, police, engineering, etc. And you can see how their budgets in 2026 compared to the prior year budget. And again, this is all detail that you'll find at the department level in your budget book. We did have some notable increases in the city attorney's office, primarily due to the movement of staff within the budget, the police department, engineering, and IT. And again, you can find those details in the budget book under the departments section. Now, I do think it's notable to talk about the general fund transfers out, because the general fund doesn't just pay for those governmental services on the prior page, it pays for a lot of other stuff too. Again, in the form of transfers out of $1.2 million in 2026. Slight decrease from 2025, but all the major categories are represented this year. We have a $200,000 transfer out to pay for the debt service on our Civic Center. We've got a $230,000 transfer out to the equipment reserve. We have a $700,000 transfer to street operations. Again, I mentioned because it doesn't have a robust funding mechanism. And finally, we had just a slight reduction in our transfers out to arts to $46,000. Again, the general fund pays for lots of other stuff other than general governmental services. And now we'll take a quick look at street operations, which is another large operational fund within our budget. We've got total revenues that increased by $163,000 or 13%, and that included transfers in from the general fund and the transportation benefit district to help pay for an increase in expenditures of approximately $162,000. And those increases are comprised of salaries and benefits. You'll see those are up by 13%. and that's primarily due to the addition of 2 seasonal support staff and also contractual bargaining unit increases that were not reflected in the 2025 budget due to the timing of the contract ratification. We had a slight decrease in supplies, but we had an increase in service or maintenance charges of about $60,000 or 28%, and that's due to street striping, the need for guardrail replacements, and utility charges. Again, we'll take a closer look at 2 more operational funds, our water and sewer operations funds. So for water, our revenues increased by about 8%, but that assumes the 5.5% rate increase approved by council, as well as growth. You'll see similar increases to sewer operations revenue. On the water operations expenses, those increased by about 6% or $265,000. Again, you'll see a bump up in salaries and benefits, a bump up in water meter stock supplies due to development. We have increased insurance assessments. We added online processing fees for utility payments. We have an increase in governmental taxes due to our increase in revenues, and a slight decrease in transfers out. And same thing with the sewer operational expenses. Slight increase in those expenditures. Again, salaries and benefits, supplies. We have a decreased insurance assessment for sewer because we had a major sewer spill claim fall off the claims history. We have a slight decrease in reuse maintenance fees. We've added online processing fees for utility payments, again, an increase in governmental taxes, and an increase in transfers out for debt payments. Okay, so now switching gears from our operational funds, let's talk a little bit about capital projects. The capital projects identified in the 2026 CIP total $17.3 million, and they include parks projects, capital facilities projects, streets, water, and multi-divisional projects. Again, totaling $17.3 million, which is a decrease of about $7 million from the CIP in 2025. A little bit more detail about our Public Works Capital Improvement Program. You'll find this detail on page 161 of the budget book, and this is that snapshot. Additional detail is going to be provided in the department pages of the books. You're going to find explanations of each project identified. This snippet is one of the parks projects. The information includes a description of the project, in this case, the Margaret Kerner Park Playground Equipment Upgrade. We also identify the location of the project, the benefit of the project to the city, and a note on the funding mechanism. Okay, now let's switch gears and talk about staffing over the years. On the very top row, you're going to see the FTE over the years, ending in 2026 with 101.6 staff. That amounts to 11.7 employees serving every 1,000 citizens, and it's remained pretty steady over the years. Total salaries and benefits in 2026 are estimated at about $13.2 million. And remember, that's before any deductions for salaries and benefits that are charged out to other departments. That $13.2 million represents about a 5% increase in salaries and benefits. Now let's look at the changes in the total FTE over the 2025 budget. As we mentioned, there's a total of 101.6 FTE in the 2026 budget. That represents 1.08 increase in FTE. And on your screen, you can see an accounting of the changes. We've removed 0.38 FTE for a temporary retirement crossover. This position was eliminated from the Public Works Department. It was the continuity advisor for the CIMDARS exchange. We've removed 0.2 FTE for a full-time person that's actually gone to part-time. We've added 0.66 FTE for 2 Public Works seasonal employees. These 2 seasonal employees will support street operations in the summertime and early fall with the right-of-way maintenance, citywide weed control, tree trimming, and mowing. And this allows our more veteran staff the breathing room to address more complicated and complex activities, like addressing ADA hazards citywide, or street striping, or crack sealing, or other more complex road repairs. Also, we've added 1 FTE for a Public Works asset analyst. This position is needed to further develop and implement the city's asset management decisions, primarily that are accounted for in our Cartograph software. It's creating an enhanced system to provide data-driven decisions. This work was originally part of the fleet and facilities manager's responsibilities. However, the quantity of the workload makes it prudent to split these tasks out into a separate position. So ultimately, the key decisions that require City Council review and approval are increasing the property tax levy by the allowed 1%, reasonable rates and fees, the proposed capital projects in accordance with the capital improvement program, and finally, to approve the 2026 budget. Finally, your next steps are read your budget book. If you would like a paper copy to make notes on, please request that from staff. We're happy to provide that to you. Also, we would love it if you would submit any questions, comments, or concerns about the budget to me. My email is right there on the screen. And finally, please request any additional time with staff that you need in order to better understand the book. Thanks for listening.